Have you ever wondered how the world you live in was built? Not with bricks and mortar, but with systems. Systems of money, knowledge, and power. How is it that one person, born nearly 2 centuries ago, could design the invisible architecture that still shapes your life today? This is the story of John D. Rockefeller, not as a man, but as the architect of a system so vast, so pervasive, you might not even realize you're living inside it. The story begins not with a villain or a hero, but with a quiet, methodical mind obsessed with order. In a chaotic world of wildcat drillers and volatile markets, Rockefeller saw an opportunity not just for wealth, but for control. He wasn't merely selling oil. He was creating a machine to dominate it. This machine was called Standard Oil. It started with a simple idea: efficiency. Rockefeller consolidated refineries, slashing waste and undercutting competitors. But his true genius was in seeing the entire system. He didn't just own the oil. He owned the barrels to hold it, the wagons to move it, the pipelines to transport it, and the chemical plants to process its byproducts. This was vertical integration on an unprecedented scale. By controlling logistics, he controlled the flow. By controlling the flow, he controlled the price. Railroads, desperate for his immense shipping volume, gave him secret rebates, allowing him to ship his oil for less than anyone else. Competitors were given a choice: join Standard Oil or be crushed. Most joined. By the 1880s, Standard Oil wasn't just a company. It was a private economic state. It refined over 90% of America's oil. It set the price of kerosene that lit homes from New York to California. It dictated terms to railroads, influenced politicians, and turned oil from a simple commodity into the lifeblood of the industrial age. The engine of modern civilization was now fueled by a single centralized entity. Rockefeller had built a monopoly, but more than that, he had created a template for how to organize and control an entire industry on a global scale. But the machine he built was designed to evolve. As public and political pressure mounted against Standard Oil's immense power, Rockefeller's vision expanded beyond a single industry. The vast profits generated by oil needed a new home, a new purpose. This is where Rockefeller's influence metastasized from corporate control to institutional design. The wealth was so immense it couldn't be spent. It had to be invested, managed, and deployed. This led to deep integration with the world of finance. Through relationships with banks like the National City Bank of New York, the Rockefeller fortune became a cornerstone of the emerging American financial empire. This capital wasn't just idle money. It was a tool for long-term influence, capable of shaping markets and funding new ventures, all without the need for direct political office. It was a quieter, more durable form of power, insulated from elections and public opinion. The next stage of the system's construction was perhaps the most ingenious. It was called philanthropy, but this was not simple charity. It was strategic, systemic, and designed to shape the very foundations of society. Through new entities called foundations, the Rockefeller Foundation, the General Education Board, he began to invest in the infrastructure of knowledge and social order. Consider modern medicine. Before the early 20th century, medical training was inconsistent, unscientific, and unregulated. The Rockefeller-funded Flexner Report of 1910 surveyed every medical school in North America, establishing a new, rigorous, science-based standard. Schools that met the standard received generous funding. Those that didn't withered and closed. In one stroke, this act of philanthropy defined the blueprint for modern medical education, research, and practice worldwide. It decided what kind of medicine would be taught, what kind of research would be funded, and what kind of doctor you would see. The same logic was applied to education. The General Education Board poured hundreds of millions into universities and schools, but with a specific goal: to create a standardized, efficient system for producing the managers, technicians, and workers a modern industrial economy required. It shaped curriculums, professionalized teaching, and established the research university model that still dominates higher education today. The goal was to create a predictable, orderly system for producing human capital. Rockefeller's philanthropy wasn't about giving away money. It was about using money to build self-perpetuating systems. These foundations could outlive any person, operating for decades to shape public health, scientific research, and social science. They created the very categories and experts we rely on today, structuring how we think about problems and what solutions seem possible. The core principles of the Rockefeller machine are now embedded in our world. The vertical integration pioneered by Standard Oil is the model for today's tech giants who control everything from software and hardware to data and distribution. The use of vast financial power to influence markets and policy without holding office is the very definition of modern global finance. The strategic use of nonprofits and foundations to shape public discourse and scientific consensus has become a standard tool of influence. When Standard Oil was eventually broken up by the Supreme Court in 1911, it seemed like a victory against monopoly, but it was too late. The system had already learned to replicate. The pieces of Standard Oil, Exxon, Mobil, Chevron became giants in their own right. More importantly, the DNA of the organization had spread. The structure of centralized control, financial insulation, and systemic influence became the blueprint for the modern corporation and even for government bureaucracies. Rockefeller himself faded from public life, but the machine he architected continued to run, growing more complex and more invisible. It no longer needed a single man at the helm. It had become autonomous. We live inside these systems today. The way our food is produced, the way our diseases are treated, the way our children are educated, the way our economy functions all bear the imprint of this design. It's a design that prioritizes efficiency, scale, and control. It's a system so successful that it has become the default, the normal, the only way we can imagine the world working. The most enduring structures of power are not the ones we fight against, but the ones we inhabit without question. They are the systems that define our choices before we even make them. John D. Rockefeller's true legacy is not the fortune he amassed, but the world he configured. A world built with such quiet, systematic genius that most of us never even think to ask who laid the first stone, or why it's so difficult to ever truly escape.